Chapter 58 The Missing Guests. Ariel. Gikaris' and Elena's wedding was an exceptional affair, easily on par with Bela's and Aegon's spectacle, if not surpassing it because of the more accommodating summer season. There had been a tourney with jousting, melee, archery, horse racing, and an entertainment fair, while the crown feasted the attendants to excess throughout the week, leading up to the grand final of the wedding ceremony itself. It had been a big event, though Ariel missed most of it. Instead, she'd arrived for the ceremony alone, and though they'd only stayed in King's Landing for a little over a day, Ariel was already impatiently setting sails homewards. Ariel peered down the bustling port side of King's Landing in the morning rush. Up at the castle, most of the wedding guests were sleeping in after the party, but here at the docks, everything was its normal busy self. She watched ships setting out in the morning mist, crews preparing for a day's work or people strolling past. Had things been different, Ariel would have considered staying longer, but she needed to return home to her son more than she needed to stay. Ariel couldn't shake the guilt over leaving James for nearly a week to attend a party. She missed his two-colored gaze, whose imbalanced hue tended to make him look rather confused. She missed his gummy smiles, his cooing and attention-hogging attitude, and Ariel worried. What if something happened? What if she'd been gone so long James forgot about her? He was only 3 months old after all. Why had this seemed so important to begin with? At least Ariel and Hagrid weren't the only ones leaving earlier rather than later. Luke and Rhaena had joined them down to the docks alongside Joffrey, Visenya, Viserys, and Rhaenys the Younger. As the elder siblings on the trip, Luke and Rhaena were tasked to escort the younger kids back to Dragonstone, while the adults would fly their dragons some days later. You missed out on all the fun! The jousting was the best, Ariel! Joffrey told her on the way down the docks. Sir Arik and Sir Eric rode against each other and broke 4 lances. Sir Eric got a splinter in his eyebrow, but his brother, Sir Arik, got thrown off his horse on the 5th turn, so Sir Eric won anyway. But on the next round he lost to Sir Thomas Gaunt. Oh, Sir Thomas Gaunt also unhorsed Sir Clayton Potter, and he fell so hard he broke his arm. Joffrey stopped abruptly and looked up at her with big brown eyes. Is he your brother? Ariel shook her head. Sir Clayton Potter? No, I understand the confusion, but those Potters are a minor house on the Reach, Joff. It's the first time I met any of them. Ariel thought back to the meeting during the wedding reception. Despite having his arm in a sling, this Clayton Potter seemed a merry, chatty fellow, though his mother proved a tad too noisy regarding Ariel's business, and quite a bit harder to shake off. I come from Britain, remember? That's not in Westeros. Damon said that too, and you don't look alike. Joffrey shrugged. But I don't look like all my siblings either, so I thought it was like that. He seemed to find that a perfectly acceptable answer, and so Joffrey continued chatting her ear off. Sir Thomas Gaunt was really good. Some bet he'd win the list, but then Sir Criston unhorsed him. For the final, Sir Criston went up against Sir Duncan Derry instead. Joffrey gesticulated wildly, enacting with dramatic theatrics just how this legendary showdown between Sir Criston of the Kingsguard and Sir Duncan Derry had gone over. Ariel oohed and ahed at the appropriate places, feigning an interest for Joff's sake. They turned at the edge of the field, and the Squire lady dropped the lance. I saw it, Ariel, I saw it! But he just managed, and threw the lance up to Sir Criston, and then he set off for the 7th round against Sir Duncan, and when the lances connected, they broke again! Joff smashed his hands together in demonstration. Can you believe it, Ariel? Can you? 7 lances! They broke 7 lances! 7! Can you believe it? I believe you, Joff. How many were there again? Hagrid chortled, but the irony of his redundant question went right over the 6-year-old's head. 7, Hagrid! Joffrey repeated while counting it out on his fingers. And then Sir Criston unhorsed Sir Duncan Derry on the 8th turn. That's mighty impressive of Sir Criston. Sir Criston crowned stepmother Alicent the Queen of Love and Beauty. Next time there's a tourney, I will be on the list too, Joffrey insisted. Then I'll crown my new sister Helena the Queen of Love and Beauty. Joffrey swung an imaginary lance in the air, imitating felling an invisible opponent, while his little sister frowned. What about me? Visenya demanded, poking Joffrey on the arm. I can crown you the time after that, Visenya, with a crown of pink flowers. But first Helena. Jace was upset Sir Kristen didn't crown her, and she's older. The elders come first. I am the eldest of your sisters. Helena is our elder good sister now, and our aunt. You're only my stupid little sister. Visenya wasn't placated by his reasons to come behind Helena at all. Mother said we may marry one day. Then I'd be your wife. You must crown me then. Rhaena got in between the kids before it could escalate, while Harryl exchanged an uncomfortable glance with Hagrid. You? I don't want to... Calm down now. This won't matter for many years to come. Rhaena ruffled Joffrey's hair. Since 6 name days is too young to enter the lists, I'm afraid the flowers you'll braid into a circlet for your chosen Queen of Love and Beauty will bloom during a different summer than this one. The boy smacked her hand away and patted his hair down. But everyone says horses are easier than dragons! Luke scoffed, unimpressed with Joff's childlike logic. And you're not riding Tyraxis yet either. I've ridden the Quintain! And you ride it well for your age, Rhaena pacified. When you're older, you'll ride Tyraxis too. In the meanwhile, you can keep practicing riding the Quintain at Dragonstone. You must master horse riding before you can be trusted to keep control of your dragon. But there's no tourneys at home. Joff sulked, kicking a pedal and making it skid off the dock's edge where it plopped into the water. Good for you there aren't, 'cause you'd get wrecked, Joff, Luke told his brother. One day I'll be as strong as Luke, as strong as Jace, Joffrey insisted. Even Sir Kristen said Jace is very strong, and I'll be just as good as him. Luke's lips pinched, just as Viserys tugged on his coat and inserted himself between them. Me too! Viserys Velaryon looked up at Luke with big purple eyes. Me strong! Me too! With a dragon! Luke tugged his coat out of Viserys' grasp. Mayhaps this discussion can continue on the boat, Rhaena said, glancing from Viserys to Joffrey. We are supposed to board. Say your goodbyes to Hagrid and Harryl now. They complied. Joffrey swore to Hagrid he'd be practicing hard and blow them all away with his skills the next time they met, and then he scurried off to join the boarding crew. Harryl had missed them, but somehow things weren't as easy as before. Their correspondence happened through letters for the last couple of years, and upon reuniting, the accumulated distance hadn't quite melted away the way it had with Bela. Though once Harryl had gotten to talking with Luke during the feast, they'd managed to fall back into familiar rhythms. Yet at the same time, something was different. Maybe it was the natural outcome of growing up, or maybe what Harryl missed was how simple it used to feel. Instead, their shedding childhood naivety left them with a veiled distance and unspoken obstacles. What was in Luke's best interest wasn't necessarily best for Harryl anymore. And thanks to thanks to James, she could never quite allow herself to forget that. There was more at stake. Or was it just an excuse Harryl told herself? The problem was that the stakes stayed the exact same they'd always been, but now they affected her differently. Then again, Luke and Rhaena looked like they itched to get away more than she did, even though they hadn't left their infant baby behind. Harryl bent down in front of Visenya and opened her arms. Can I have a goodbye hug? With a sharp shake of the head, Visenya took cover behind Luke's leg. The boy gave her a helpless shrug, and Harryl let it be. What else could she expect? Visenya used to know her, and though it's only been a couple of years for Harryl, that was half a lifetime ago to the little princess. Instead, the witch turned to Viserys, whom she hadn't seen since a newborn, However... Prince Viserys? Ariel glanced around after the 2-year-old. He was just here. She saw him only seconds ago. Rhaena and Luke noticed the absence as well. Viserys? Rhaena called. Viserys, Luke repeated, peering up and down the pier. Oh, he's just there, Hagrid chortled, pulling Viserys out from where he'd been undetectably hiding behind the half-giant's legs. This is not the time nor place for hide-and-seek, Viserys. You could fall in the water, Rhaena scolded. Viserys giggled, not the slightest bit perturbed by Rhaena's warning. Can I have a goodbye hug, my prince? Ariel asked the boy. Viserys pondered the request for a moment before allowing it. The 2-year-old toddled forwards, arms wrapping around her legs as Ariel hugged him farewell too. Bye, he said in a childishly high voice. Bye, Viserys. Behind them, Ariel saw little Rhaenys boarding the ship with the wet nurses and nursemaids, while Joffrey told the ladies his long-term goals of becoming a great jouster. The boy relayed this while climbing the ship railing with the grace of a clumsy bear cub, before Lady Alinda dragged him down with a roll of her eyes. Princess Rhaenyra had picked a good group of maids to care for him. She had 5 women to help raise her children, but she also had 6 children, not 1. It was different, Ariel told herself. The 2 wet nurses were for baby Rhaenys, while 3 maids looked after Visenya, Viserys and Joffrey. All the same, there could be 394 wet nurses looking after James, and Ariel would be just as anxious to get back. Her son had been with Maria for 5 days. It was unbearable. Well, alright. So maybe Ariel had slept like the dead throughout the trip, enjoying the uninterrupted rest so much she nearly overslept to the wedding ceremony. All the same, though it had been nice to re-energize, Ariel was impatient to see her son again. She also wished to get back to Aemond, so they could talk out their disagreement. She had not been able to convince Aegon and Bella to attend the wedding, but it wasn't her place to anyway, though she tried to talk to Aemond. Seeing as she'd attended without him, it clearly hadn't gone her way. Why would I attend? They were invited to my coming of age too, but conveniently missed it by a day. Aemond shrugged with false carelessness, as if some pettiness over that was why he declined attending Helena's wedding. The king won't care, said Aemond forcefully. He won't care, Ariel. When the fuck did he ever care? About politics, about the family, about stability? If there is one person in that place that truly won't care whether we're present, it's him. Not caring regarding stability? This is precisely for stability, Ariel argued. It's about nothing else, and you are stubbornly refusing to allow it. Because it's like putting bandages on an amputation. It fixes nothing. All the injuries are still there, just hidden behind some flimsy covers. Helena has no claim that outweighs Aegon, Daeron, or myself. Her marrying Jace doesn't make Aegon less a firstborn son of the king. Doesn't make my own or Daeron's claim any weaker either. This is yet another way Rhaenyra's lot is making whom they're fucking into everyone else's problem. It doesn't stabilize anything but the king's woolly dreams. Aemond, don't! No, I will! Don't stand there and tell me I'm the problem here. This is just another move that puts us in the weaker position, all the while fixing nothing. Myself, Jaehaerys, you? Do you intend to fly to Driftmark to talk Princess Rhaenys to give her blessing to the people who murdered her son? Would you be this supportive if he killed Jaehaerys? Ariel's breath caught. You go too far. Do I? How can you say that after what befell Laenor? Or are you merely willfully ignoring what makes you uncomfortable? By law, our son is head of Rhaenyra in the line of succession. By decree of the king, it's not to be. Rhaenyra is an exception, who's never valued laws or oaths. It did nothing for Laenor, despite him being in her bed and her most powerful ally. Whatever we suspect regarding Daemon, don't mistake Jaehaerys for his stepfather. Jaehaerys had nothing to do with anything regarding Sir Laenor. He loved his father. He's just benefiting of those who did, I agree, Aemond said. So he keeps his tongue behind his teeth and lets the lies continue like a craven, all the while leeching off Helena's validity in pursuit of claiming it for his own. What about the rest of court? You care about that, and everyone will care that you're not there. Then they'll know I disapprove of his farce. Aegon isn't going either. Let them speculate why. They'd still guess closer than whatever lie my father will tell them. And your sister? Do you believe Helena won't care that you're not there? This was Helena's idea, Aemon shrugged. She's merely reaping what she sowed and should be able to handle it. I tried to aid her years ago, but we ended up in an argument. There's nothing I can do. Well, I will attend alongside Hagrid. Not because of the stupid politics, but because Helena needs us. It's her wedding, and it'll be overwhelming for her to get through this. Harriet shuddered, words about how the betting would go over. She couldn't imagine anyone would react worse to that than Helena. Oh gods. You need to be there, Aemond. The betting, it's bad enough just because of Helena's discomforts with being touched. But if her brothers were there to keep the worst off, that sounds like her issues, not mine. Not anymore. Aemond snarled. She wanted this marriage. She can have it, but I will have no part in it. If this was about what Helena alone wanted, she wouldn't get married at all, but she knows it's her duty. Ariel tried to reason with him. She said her marriage was not about her own desires, but for the sake of those she loves. Then I wonder who her loved ones were all these years, he said quietly. I must have misunderstood. Don't be daft! It's for you, Aemond! Ariel snapped. The only reason she even contemplated this in the first place isn't for an older sister she doesn't know, or some great love. It's because Helena is trying to make it harder for everyone to hurt each other. It's for the same reason Aegon and Bela were wed. Aemond looked down at his clenched fist. Is it working? Ariel wondered. He didn't answer. You'd never hurt Helena, would you? No, Aemond growled. Though I presumed I could expect the same from her. It seems I was mistaken. I have to go, Ariel said. I must think there's ways to keep a good relation, and that can't happen if everyone just stops. Jaehaerys remains here, Aemond said with finality. You may leave with Hagrid, but our son stays at home. A fair few had come up to Hariel, wondering where her husband was, why Aegon and Bale remained at the Point in the Fangs too. What the bloody hell was Hariel supposed to say? They didn't want to attend their sister's wedding? Daeron wasn't present either, but that was easier dismissed when he was so much further away than Aemond and Aegon. Their absence was noteworthy, but what may have been even more glaring was how not a single member of House Velaryon had been in attendance either. It was Prince Jaehaerys Velarion's wedding, yet not one Velaryon had arrived from Driftmark. At any rate, it meant Helena Targaryen married Jaehaerys Velaryon without any of her brothers present. Hariel felt awful over it too, but it's not as if they had a chance to discuss it. Helena wasn't one to overshare on the best of days, and as the royal bride, she'd been a bit too preoccupied for casual girl talk. The pressure and attention left Helena so uncomfortable she nearly appeared a statue for the ceremony, a stiffness which hadn't eased up for the wedding feast either. Despite looking ethereally beautiful in an airy lace gown of pale green, blue and gold, the skirt embroidered with silver and crystal imageries, while her hair was braided around a golden circlet with sapphires, Helena was miserable. Harold didn't think it was because of Jace, but just a week-long wedding. A week of being stared at, of talking, and setting an example for the courtiers. A week of feasts and tourneys. A week of being crowded with barely any room to breathe. A proper royal wedding, for better and worse. And that had probably sucked Helena empty. It worried Hariel in more ways than one. When Helena struggled this much getting through a wedding, But how would she hold up as queen? Judging by Queen Alicent's example, the duties of a queen were 95% to be social, to be seen, charismatic and a diplomat for the crown, to surround herself with important people and make them like her and everything she stood for. But Helena wanted to be left alone. The small folk of King's Landing adored Princess Helena, as they never expected close proximity with royals, and Helena was better at grace when it was from a distance. But the nobles? Of course, the guests weren't made aware of Helena's proximity aversions, and couldn't understand that part of it. Instead, it just looked imbalanced. The more stiff and uncomfortable Helena behaved, the more exuberant Jace reacted, as if urgently trying to make up for their dichotomy. Hariel wished he wouldn't, while also understanding where he was coming from. But regardless of how hard Jace tried, it simply didn't appear great to have a bride that looked near a panic attack. It certainly wasn't Jace's fault that Helena didn't like crowds, but neither was it Helena's fault that the guests were left wondering if her ill-at-ease behavior may be because of her husband, and not the situation. After all, their mothers weren't helping the impression. Both Queen Alicent and Princess Rhaenyra treated each other like they wanted to push the other off a belfry, and a less informed observer may assume Helena followed her mother's disapproving example. Yet Jace's attempt to pretend all was perfectly peachy made it worse. Helena was exhausted, overwhelmed, and wanted it finished. So Helena drank. She drank a lot. At first it dosed her anxiety enough to relax and crack a few smiles. Then she became uncharacteristically charming and giggly the way Aegon could get while drunk too. None done the buzz, Helena was able to keep it up through the dances, where she acted bubbly and took turns dancing with several lords she'd have shied away from touching if sober, until she returned to her seat, crashed, and fell asleep at the table. She had to be shaken awake by Jace. For once, Hariel was delighted whenever she glanced Lady Jacqueline Redwine. The ginger-haired teen pranced around the bride like a guard dog, using banter and quick excuses to rebuff the majority of the guests' attempt to interact with the bride. She was so thorough she'd even given Hariel a sour look, and sent her away from talking to Helena too. Who the bloody hell was Jacqueline to do that? Hariel was left seething. Though once she took a step back and calmed down from insulting Jacqueline in several different languages within her head, she'd seen some rhyme and reason to being denied. Because at least Jacqueline knew. Jacqueline lived on Dragonstone as one of Helena's ladies-in-waiting, and probably understood better than Hariel what helped the exhausted princess get through this ordeal. Maybe the wedding was so overwhelming that even Hariel's well-meaning concern would actually be a burden to Helena, not help. Jacqueline and Hariel would never hold any fondness for one another, but you couldn't outright dismiss Jacqueline's dedication to Helena either, which was such a shame. It made it harder to hold on to resentments. Jacqueline had always been Helena's annoying lady-in-waiting, the sneering hag who always gave Hariel the cold shoulder while staring too softly at Aemond. A dismissive, rude, rumor-spreading socialite. She was still such a bitch. But she was Helena's bitch. And perhaps there was the smallest, tiniest chance, just a trace of a possibility, that she wasn't all bad. As the evening wore on, Hariel was sure something would go wrong. It always did. Though the one who reached their breaking point first was slightly unexpected. It wasn't Helena. It wasn't Jace. It wasn't Luke after the 10th time some courtiers pondered loudly why Viserys Velaryon was the heir to Driftmark ahead of him. Not Sir Otto giving Daemon death glares, nor the rogue prince shooting innocent smirks in return, nor Rhaenyra's cool stonius. No, it was Queen Alicent, who burst into near hysterical tears halfway through dinner and ran out of the feast. It's always difficult for a mother to see their sweet little girl so grown, the king excused, and the hall chortled and nodded along, even if not everyone were convinced, Hariel chief among them. If there was a silver lining, it was how everyone came through the wedding without becoming crippled. Neither had any pets been stolen or butchered. So that was something. At least wave Ariel farewell, Visenya. It's what proper ladies do, said Reyna pointedly. The 4-year-old princess frowned at Ariel suspiciously, but under the strict watch of her sister, Visenya waved. Amused, Ariel returned the wave. Have a safe trip home, Princess Visenya. She nodded firmly, then tugged Luke's hand. Can we leave now? Visenya whined. Soon, sister. You need to visit us at Castle Point sometimes, offered Ariel. Luke's answer came a beat too late to not sound hesitant. We will. You as well, Reyna. I look forward to it, though will you relay my regards to my sister? Wondered Reyna. Tell her I wish you could have made it. I will. They finished their farewells, and soon after Harold stood on the deck with Hagrid as their ship raised anchor and drifted out of the Blackwater rush, leaving behind the pinched odor of the capital. Ugh, Hagrid sighed. It's only a matter of time before the seasickness sets in. It never gets better? Nah, not really. With good winds and at the risk of sailing in the dark, one might voyage from King's Landing to Dragonstone in a day. As that was about halfway to home, they estimated 2 days to sail to Port Point. So Ariel lifted her wand to turn the lazy morning breeze into a proper wind, filling the sails emblazoned with the compass star of House Hagrid with a proper draft, stretching the sheets taut and urging the ship homewards. Magic sped up their voyage, and there was still daylight when they docked at the portside town of Hull at Driftmark. They could have reached Dragonstone before dark, but the increased speed meant Hagrid's squeezy stomach wasn't having it. News of their presence travelled fast across the island, and Hagrid's colour had only just reverted from a greasy pale to its familiar ruddy shade when Sir Vaemond Valerian showed up. Lord Rubeus Hagrid, what a pleasant surprise. We weren't expecting you. Dressed in a flowing lavender coat and a dapper feathery hat, Vaemond strolled up the pier, arms outstretched at his side as if greeting the return of a lifelong friend. Hagrid chuckled. We were on our way home from the wedding, sir, so we're only docking your port for the night, and then we'll be on our way again. Here. Sir Vaemond shook his head, the fluffy feathers flopping from side to side. Won't you join us at the castle for the night? You'll enjoy sweeter comforts behind the walls of Driftmark in a feather bed. You're travelling with ladies too. Surely the Lady Harrow would appreciate the hospitality. Oh, that's mighty generous of you, sir, but it's a bit far. We meant to be on our way at dawn. Hagrid shook his head. And isn't the tide wrong? Isn't the road to high tide blocked by the water levels? First we'd have to ride across the island and take a boat to get there. That's a lot of trouble for you. No, don't worry about it, sir. The ship is good enough for the night. You're right, we can't access Castle High Tide on foot at this hour, my lord. But there's still Old Castle Driftmark, suggested Vaemond. Castle Driftmark is not as stately as High Tide, but it's the ancestral seat of House Valerian, and it's certainly better than a shipbed in a cramped compartment out here on the docks. At that, Hagrid turned to Ariel hopefully. She peered up above the village rooftops to where she could glimpse one of the towers of Castle Driftmark. Just a short walk away. The castle was in a decaying state. Age and wear left it a grim reminder of how its glory days had passed long ago, and it regularly suffered flooding. But it was still a stone castle, with sturdy floors which didn't rock with the waves. That alone made it 1,000 times preferable to Hagrid. Ariel nodded. It was afternoon the following day when Ariel finally got home, though it was hard to tell who was more impatient to reach the point. Ariel, who wanted to see her family, or Hagrid, who wanted to get off the ship. Been away for nearly a week. Now that I'm back, I must see to the babies, don't I? I know the ship has to dock at Port Point, but why don't you drop me off here instead? Hagrid pointed to land as they were sailing past the peak of the point. It's a much shorter walk to the dragons for me. Might even make it back to the castle for dinner. It was mostly an excuse to get off the ship early, but it also wasn't much trouble to do Hagrid that favor. After getting Hagrid to land near the dragon nests, the rest sailed the remaining distance around the peninsula to port points. Prioritizing a different baby than the kind Hagrid cared for, Hale decided she'd see Norbert the following day, and instead she rode straight to Castle Point to locate Miria Siltigar in her private chambers, where she was caring for James. 5 days away, and Harry returned to find her son looking healthy and well in his bassinet. "You're back," said Miria. "How was the wedding?" "Too long." James blinked up at her from his bassinet, making Harry break into a smile. "I've missed you, sunshine," Harry murmured, picking him up. She kissed his soft head and breathed him in, precious, soft, and smelling like her baby. "Have you been good for Lady Miria? Have you behaved for your dada?" James gurgled in answer, hands tangling with her hair. "Was he difficult? Did you get any sleep?" Errol asked. "It went well, my lady," said Miria. "I once cared for Lord Celticar's youngest for a moon, and he was a crier. Held the whole castle awake with his wailing, near impossible to please. 5 days is nothing I haven't done before, and James is hardly the most challenging babe." "How did it go with your daughter? Did he keep her up at night?" "Not long ago my lass slept in a bed crowded with a litter of cousins. I dare say my lass would sooner wake from silence than crying." Ariel chuckled. "Is she lonely here without her cousins, having a bed to herself?" "On some days, but on those she merely climbs into mine." Miria smiled. "Was Aemond here to aid you, Bela?" "Lady Bela was helpful, though she was feeling under the weather when we broke our fast. The prince has been by frequently with his opinions." Bela was sick? Had she been around her son while sick? Harry had told everyone that if they felt sick, even if it was just a cough, they were not to be around James. "Thank you for caring for him," she murmured. "I'll let you get some rest." "I'll go lay down." Miria nodded. "Do you require me this evening?" "No, I'll take him." "How's your milk? You've already been feeding him less when I've been taking nights, and then you were away." "If it's an issue, I'll inform you." She left Miria's chambers and decided to bathe James sooner rather than later. He needed to be changed anyway. Ariel headed to her apartment a few doors down, but stopped before their door, hand resting on the handle in hesitation. What was she coming home to? Aemond had not bid her farewell when she left for the wedding. Exhaling, she turned the handle and went to face the music. "I'm home." Aemond was in the solar, tackling his correspondences stacked in neat piles across the living room table. "Welcome home." He glanced towards the window where the sun shone high in the sky. "Did you leave early?" "Yesterday, at dawn." "Then you must have been blessed with good winds." "Not exactly. I used magic wind to speed the ship along." "I used a spell to get better winds for the sails," Ariel clarified. "That's convenient." "It's a version of the spell I used for the caves inside the Dragon Point." James squawked for attention, and Harold gesticulated towards their bathroom. "I need to go bathe and change him." Their bathroom had a private tub, a toilet and sink with water, but Harry passed them all and headed for Hagrid's magical trunk. Since the Point in the Fangs was built to suit Hagrid's size and comforts, it meant that for the first time since Britain, there were fitting bathroom facilities within the castle itself, and he wasn't as reliant on the bathroom in his expandable trunk. At the same time, having a baby proved a messy affair, and despite enjoying a vastly superior sewer and water system in their castle compared to most of Westeros, it couldn't compare with the indoor plumbing of magical Britain. That was why Hagrid had offered for them the use of his expandable trunk. The bathroom there was a godsend, with easily accessible temperature-regulated water, adjustable tubs and everything in between. It was still Hagrid's, but he was happy to lend it for their use when it made caring for James so much more convenient. Ariel took her time, changing James's soiled cloth, bathing him, before taking a shower herself, cleaning off the trip while James was occupied cooing at the different colored bubbles she'd spilled to dance around his head. The piece lasted nearly 3 whole minutes, and then James grew whiny, and Ariel knew her shower had come to an end. She quickly pulled on a rope, picked up her boy, and went to feed him. When she came back into the solar, James was squeaking like a distressed baby bird. Emmett looked up as Ariel sunk into the rocking chair, pushing the rope off her shoulder for James's meal. "Can you do that for more than one ship?" Emmett asked, apropos of nothing. Huh? Busy encouraging James to stop complaining and start eating instead, Ariel had no idea what he was talking about. "What you said before about spelling wind into the sails, can you do this for more than the ship you're on? For other ships, maybe more than one?" "I don't know." "Do you can do it for one?" Yes," she said, unsure how to interpret the exchange. Why were they talking about this? Wasn't he going to ask about the wedding? Bitch about how she shouldn't have gone? Mention their fight? That's something to consider for the ships. Give them good winds, speed their voyages, and... Thoughtful, Eamon's fingers tapped rhythmically over the tabletop. "That's true," Ariel agreed. Was he ignoring it? Pretending it hadn't happened? Living in a bubble of temporary denial that his favorite sister remained unwed? "Speaking of trade, we slept at Castle Driftmark on our way home." "High Tide?" "No, the old castle, and over supper Sir Vaemon tried to haggle magical favor to renovate their ancestral castle." That piqued his interest. Did he now? It seemed, despite how angry he'd been when she left for King's Landing, the ire had deflated out of him since, at least while they were talking of something else. "I stopped any serious negotiations before Hagrid promised anything, but we do owe them a favor. Princess Renice arranged our wedding." "A wedding is not worth the same as repairing that castle. There's a reason Lord Corlys spent so much gold and a couple of decades building a new castle instead of mending the old one." "I'm aware, but Hagrid and I can significantly improve the old castle, perhaps mend the worst of the flooding. Besides, I think we can do worse than trading favors with House Velaryon." Aemond licked his lips. "This can be an opportunity for us, Ariel. Well done." "I thought so as well, but don't get ahead of yourself. Sir Vaemond is the Castellan of the old castle and the one pushing for this, but he's not the Lord of House Velaryon. This is still Lord Corlys' decision. While he's at war in the Stepstones, it falls to Princess Renice to sit the Driftwood throne in his stead," he pointed out. She stroked lightly over James's soft head, feeling uncomfortable discussing money and favors. Though where she'd once flick out her wand and start mending the draft, the damp and the flooding just because it was a nice thing to do, Ariel now had responsibilities. The point didn't run itself on magic alone, and it would be neglectful to ignore the potential profits. They needed income, and the way Ariel and Hagrid could utilize their magic was a rare commodity, unique to them alone, which could bring in a significant amount of gold. They had a castle of staff to feed, livestock, dragons, handlers, farmers, general maintenance, and so much more. They were still in the early days, and were still spending more than they earned. Yes, the population of Port Point was expanding, but the taxes from that number wasn't anywhere near enough, especially after the extended visit from the royal court. That had been extremely expensive. It was a new sort of anxiety, worrying over the price of sugar, spices, wheat, wine, and other such items she'd once taken for granted, and just how quickly it got swallowed up by the couriers. Where the bloody hell could she acquire more? What funds to draw upon to see it happen? So Aemond had talked with both Hagrid and Ariel about this, and now it was happening. Corlys Velaryon was one of the wealthiest lords in Westeros, yet he hadn't been able to afford renovating his ancestral castle, and it had been cheaper to make a new one instead. That said something about the value of Hagrid and Ariel's magic. But what was the correct way to negotiate magic? It's not like there was a set exchange rate between spell and gold. Yet. I think we should talk with Princess Rhaenys, see what they're after and give our price. One that reflects our ability, but is also on the generous side. Princess Rhaenys has been a friend to us. We should demonstrate how much we value that in our offer. Aemond considered it. Once James finished his meal, there was some shifting around as Ariel wiggled her robe back in place. How have you been, Sunshine? Did you miss me? I missed you. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Ariel babied him in a high, soft voice. James's lazy smile made her grin, his two-colored eyes giving him such an adorable, dopey expression. Jaehaerys laughed, Aemond told her. What? Her head whipped up. He did? When? A couple days ago? Surely, he's never done that before. Are you certain it wasn't merely cooing while smiling? He does that. No, I promise I made him laugh. Aemond shook his head. See here, I'll try to make him do it again. He walked around the table to pick James out of her arms. With a proper hold, he mindfully yet swiftly dipped their son downwards, mimicking the swooping motion of a controlled fall. James cooed and smiled. Clearly he enjoyed it, true, but there was no laugh. He likes it, Ariel chuckled. I made him laugh with this, Aemond insisted, and tried again. James's smile widened at the dip, arms waving at his side whilst making an indistinguishable gasping sound, as if he was too excited and didn't know how to get all the noises out all at once. I think it's... James laughed. Aemond looked to her, vindicated at Ariel's astonished gasp. Let me try! There was a flurry of movements while she wrestled James back. She tried the same move, dipping the baby carefully. It took her a few times to get the same motions Aemond had, and then... James's chirpy little laugh sounded more wondrous than magic. Oh, are you laughing? Did you start laughing and your mother missed it because of some stupid wedding? Listen to you. Listen to him, Aemond. Isn't that the sweetest sound? I can't believe I missed his first laugh. It's not as if it's his last. Ariel smiled at James. You're growing so fast, Sunshine. Honestly, look how big you've grown. She could swear he was bigger too. Ariel had missed James so much, and hated being in King's Landing without Aemond. It's not that Ariel thought the trip would have improved with his company, as nothing brought out the worst of her husband Van Court. But though Aemond could be a stubborn asshole, for better or worse, he was so in their defense. Aemond had never made a secret that his priority was them, and always had her back amongst those courtly gossipers and schemers. This time Ariel faced the crowds alone, making her feel intimately how much Aemond normally shielded her from such. Don't you think it's bigger too, Aemond? Ariel asked. I can't believe I can see a difference in 5 days. Aemond's soft smile melted away. It was your choice to leave him. Ah, so he was still angry then. Ariel sighed. I had to go. Did you? He wrinkled his nose. Yes, I had to go. She stressed the words. Be serious, Aemond. Considering the alternatives we're left with, your way isn't solving matters either. My way? He shook his head. I have no way, Ariel. If I had a say, my way would not look like this. Then what would it be? What does hypothetical dreams matter? It's out of my hands. Ariel sat back down with James in her lap. Could their son feel the rising tension too? But some things are. You wouldn't come to the wedding and you're angry at Hagrid and me for trying. Yet you won't cooperate with Rhaenyra, not even with Helena married to Jace. Aemond made a dismissive tsk sound she interpreted as, "Don't talk about that." Well, he was all out of luck. I don't see how sitting out the wedding helped. It didn't change the outcome except make Helena feel abandoned. This was a political marriage attempting to mend the rift in your house, but you won't support it, nor acknowledge Helena's efforts. Your kin are trying, Aemond, but you shun it, even as you won't put forth any alternative options. Ariel shook her head. What else can be done at this point? You want an example of what would stabilize the situation for good? He asked, agitated. It's simple. The king could name Aegon his heir. That's all the king needs do. If Aegon is heir, then everyone could live their lives as they pleased, be it Rhaenyra starting a harem or Jace pretending he's trueborn. Because then whatever treasons they commit next wouldn't be a continental-wide political disaster that threatens my life, or our son's life. No, it'd merely be a family shame. That won't happen, Ariel said slowly. I may not like it, but the king will never exchange Rhaenyra as his heir. You must accept that. That is our future, and we must make the best of it. What else can we do but try to get along? He could change the succession. He won't. Of everyone. Aemond cut her off. My king father? If he's truly so confident about his chosen heir, he could do us all the decency of making it a law for everyone to follow. Every firstborn, regardless of sex, all over Westeros. How is that for an alternative? He glared at her expectantly. Do you think that an unreasonable thing to request? No, she answered. Then how come you've never suggested he do it then, as you once did when suggesting Helena and Jace's marriage? Because Ariel wasn't an idiot. If the king changed those laws, he'd destabilize every single house in the realm. There'd be conflicts and betrayals nearly everywhere, which would likely escalate into full-out war. Wars had started for far less than the king causing succession conflicts in every single house where there happened to be an older sister. And the king knew that too. It's precisely why he didn't do it. Changing the succession law continentally would make King Viserys extremely unpopular, while weakening the king's own rights to the throne, seeing as Princess Rhaenys still sat at Driftmark. He had put forth his claim for the throne against the rightful heir, Princess Rhaenys, during the Council of 101, and he'd won only because he was a man. Now he'd destabilize everyone else by being a hypocrite? More so than he already was? The king sure would champion Rhaenyra at the expense of his sons, his grandsons too, but he'd certainly not secure Rhaenyra if it came at the expense of the king's own personal comforts. To trouble the king himself was too much to ask, too much to merely suggest without risk of being threatened to have their tongues cut out, which said something about how scared the king was to hear it. He wouldn't hear a whisper of it. He wouldn't justify it. He wouldn't secure it. He wouldn't work for it. He'd do nothing but throw money at the problem and lie about a unity that didn't exist. Yet the fact he wouldn't also made it impossible to ever fully justify Rhaenyra. It kept his sons in danger, while making Rhaenyra's claim ridiculously easy to contest. And only the king remained content with such a state of affair. Aemond waved a dismissive hand. You want more alternatives? His Grace could also call a great council and make the lords swear new oaths, or any oaths at all, seeing as most of the lords today weren't lords yet at the time the other one was made. He could demand Rhaenyra do her duties to prove herself capable to the court and the realm. But no, he won't. He leaned forwards. Don't you see? I am merely stuck reacting to his whims. And no, I can't change the will of the king. But I don't have to stand there and pretend I support it anymore either. Neither will Aegon, nor should you. We are bound in this together now. His eyes flickered to their son. As long as the king denies all avenues that could secure true stability, be it make Aegon the heir, change the Westeros' succession laws for everyone, or call a fucking council, he won't allow for anything that could be called a stable solution. He's too busy with his model. Yet he granted you this. Harold gestured around the room. How can you think that doesn't mean something? Portpoint and everything we've built. No, he granted Hagrid this. Or at least he didn't argue with the council's agreement after I convinced him to allow Hagrid this. Even then, our son is heir through Hagrid, not me. This wasn't meant for me. The king wanted you wed to fucking Damon, remember? He sneered. Besides, he granted Hagrid this without realizing fully what your magic could accomplish. Otherwise, I'm not sure even his grace would have allowed Hagrid quite so many honors. Eamon specified. The point was supposed to take 20 years to complete, not 2. They erred in that assumption, and I will take advantage of it. Though for now, all I can do is make certain we're not undermined. Make the Dragon Point as prosperous as possible, so they don't dare fuck with us. I will not be a gullible fool like our father, and I'm making it clear that if they try to pull assassinations like they did with Sir Lenor, I will not leave it at... No. All I can do is to try and make it a little safer for us when it all collapses. Can't you feel it? He was on a roll now, pacing back and forth. What do you think will happen if Rhaenyra takes the throne, when she's made a struggle for scraps of support but finds it challenging without our father clearing her way? When she'll constantly get reminded how her brother's claim remains too strong compared to hers? What will come of her life at the point then? The king granted these lands, but if Rhaenyra ascends the throne, don't be surprised if she takes the earliest pretext to strip us of our home, so she may pass off our accomplishments to her sons instead. She wouldn't. She would in a heartbeat, Ariel. He laughed mirthlessly. After seeing how it's prospered, what she missed out on, do you think you matter more to her than her sons? Do you think I do? No, but there are laws and precedents. And she's never heeded them before. What else do you call her attempted usurpation of Driftmark? We have dragons. It'd be folly. So did the Valarians. Did she not have the previous heir to Driftmark killed? Did she not put Lukeforth as heir to a house he had no claim to? If the new heir to Driftmark wasn't her youngest son Viserys, that would have ended differently. If it had been Sir Vaemond or some other Valarian cousin, she would have fought to keep Luke as the heir, and never accepted Lord Corlys' decision. In fact, I don't think Prince Viserys is safe with a stepfather like Daemon, when he's already killed his father. Rhaenyra is not Daemon. She accepted it, Ariel snarled. Despite suffering great insult, Princess Rhaenyra accepted Prince Viserys as a new heir to Driftmark. Why would she do any different if it was Vaemond? But we're not talking of Driftmark. Her line has nothing to do with the point. What keeps her hands tight regarding Driftmark is that she pitted her sons against each other, and she knows it's her fault. Fighting for Luke's false claim to Driftmark means robbing Prince Viserys of his birthright, so she's run off to Driftmark to sulk instead. Though she'd react differently if the contender for Driftmark wasn't one of her other children. However, the point is the seat Luke actually holds a weak blood claim to. He holds no Valarian blood, but he does have Targaryen blood. No, Luke has no claim to the point. Luke had even less claim to Driftmark. Besides, making us weaker is in her best interests. I don't see why she wouldn't try it. She's proven willing to commit usurpations like that time and again. Aemond was making a twisted sort of logic Harald didn't believe, but couldn't fully dismiss logically. This is Hagrid's lands, Ariel stressed, mocking James more for her own comforts than his. Our home. We built this. They have no grounds to give it away. You're making things up. You didn't want to go to the wedding, so you're making up these excuses to justify it. Yes. And... what? These excuses are why I don't support Rhaenyra using my sister to strengthen her side. Why I wouldn't attend the wedding I am opposed to. I had an alternative this time. I could stay here at home, and I used it. Aegon used it. I couldn't stop the marriage, but I wasn't going to stand there and allow my king father to pretend my presence meant I supported it either. I don't. That doesn't make what I say less a potential threat. The king holds a claim to all things within the realm. and these lands are co-run with the crown because of the dragon points. Aemond punctuated his words. If she becomes queen, Rhaenyra will feel entitled to take whatever she pleases, as always. And then there's Daemon. They would rather have Luke and Rhaena here than us, and you know it. She swallowed. That only happens if there's grounds for it, if we break the law. So Rhaenyra can break the laws and still inherit Westeros, but we can't defend ourselves against being usurped without becoming lawbreakers? Where have I heard that before? My, isn't that exactly what's happened with Aegon? Westeros is his birthright by law and precedent too. And please, my dear wife, take a good hard look at how much they care. Aemond's voice was full of distasteful mockery. They're making it into a lose-lose situation for us at every turn, and you still choose her. Of course not! Don't be daft! Trying to avoid a fucking war isn't the same as choosing Rhaenyra over my family. I'd never! If they try to take our home, I'll curse them into toads. But I don't need to be a dragon dreamer to predict cursing the heir to the throne would cause war, which would put you at risk, put James in danger. So I can't... And we're not there. Not yet. And it should never get to that point at all. That's not what I want. Think of James. I am, Aemond said shortly. His gaze turned into where James was reaching for Haryl's damn curls, fingers tangling into the strands. If anything, Jaehaerys' birth makes me consider these things more. Too much. He was well into paranoid territory. Nothing will get better if everyone gives up, Aryll said sensibly, forcing some semblance of reason into a conversation that had long since flied off into unimaginable directions, into unacceptable possibilities. If you treat them like enemies, they will become enemies, and they have dragons too. That's no solution. Neither is their way, he said. And we have bigger dragons. Besides, we have magic. It'd do my sister well to remember that. Both of them. Her heart twisted. She was used to Aemond speaking that way of Rhaenyra, but Helena too? Were some marriage vows all it took for him to give her up? For a moment, Aryll allowed herself to imagine the very worst. Of dragons in the air, burnt lands, armies, bloodshed and charred corpses. No, it would be horrible, indescribably ruinous. And yet, what was even worse than that, the very worst outcome to Aryll. What if James got swept up in something like... Holding her little boy tighter, Aryll found herself standing up without making the decision to do so. Her chest clenched as she took a greedy breath. Something threatening James's well-being was inconceivable, the fear alone making it hard to breathe. Aryll? She rushed through the solar and out the door. The shuffle of her quick steps echoed softly down the hallway, past the door to Hagrid's apartment, then Lady Maria's, Alisa's, and then the elevator, where the door opened just as she passed. Sister! Aryll recognized the voice, but the title he'd picked up for her during his stay at the Point still sometimes threw her off. This time it ruined her attempts to storm off, and she was still very distracted when she turned back. Aegon? Aegon stepped off the elevator, leaning his weight over his cane. Initially, Aryll assumed he was being ironic whenever he'd call her sister, until she heard Aegon use the same sarcastic tone saying, brother, to Aemond, and began wondering if it might be her brother-in-law's way of accepting her into the family. As likable and handsome as Aegon could be, Aryll had never gotten along with him. His excessive flirting and mockery made her incredibly uncomfortable, at times a little scared. And yet he was her brother now. She was one of them. But that did erase everything she'd been before? What of her years at Dragonstone? Growing up alongside Jace, Luke, Rhaena, and the rest? Did her choice of spouse erase it all? Did it for Helena? How could a few words in a sept make Helena more like Luke's sister than Aemond's? What of Bela? She was struggling with similar matters, feeling as if her father had given her up since she'd been married away. And of everyone, Bela had merely married as ordered. Aegon too. At the end of the day, Aemond actually had far more agency regarding whom he'd married than his older brother was allowed. "How is Bela faring?" Ariel asked. "I heard she felt unwell." "My wife's resting in her room, and your stuttering maester has been by." "I hope you haven't caught anything?" "Besides the obvious, I feel well enough," he said, eyes trailing down her body. "Do you regularly walk around the castle undressed? Is that normal in your homelands?" Aegon hummed thoughtfully. "Perhaps I'd have liked to visit this Britain place you speak so fondly of." It was in that instance Ariel remembered herself. She'd forgotten to get dressed after her shower. She only had the robe, not even a shift underneath, barefoot and with her hair limp and damp. Ariel stuttered, and try as she might, no excuse came to mind. Aegon snickered as he reached out to Bob James on the nose. Her son gurgled. "Get dressed. I came to fetch you and Aemond. Hagrid is causing a commotion up in the Great Hall." Hagrid? Why?" Ariel edged back the way she'd come, her face feeling like it was on fire. Besides the embarrassment, her thoughts kept whirling back to her discussion with Aemond, making it harder to guess what Hagrid was up to. "I need to get dressed, but I'll send Aemond up." "He was asking for you," Aegon said. "As well as his trunk? He said you had his, but he needs it." "His trunk? And me too? I've been with Hagrid all week. What could have happened in the few hours since I last saw him?" The answer was quite a lot. Dressed and with James asleep in a sling, Ariel, Aemond and Aegon arrived at bustling activity within the Great Hall. "Dragon eggs!" Aemond breathed when they saw what Hagrid had brought. He handed over the magical trunk and went up to the fire for a closer look. "Thank you. I need some books from here." Hagrid set the trunk down. "For the eggs." "Where did you find them, Hagrid?" asked Aemond. There were 3 eggs incubating in the fireplace, each set in their own cauldron. Hagrid beamed at Ariel. "Norbert! I found them in Norbert's lair, Ariel. 4 of them." "Norbert?" It was Ariel's turn to be astonished. "My dragon-laid eggs?" "I found them in her lair, so who else? Vhagar can't fit in that cave, and I doubt Moondancer went into Norbert's lair to lay them. That goes against the dragon's instincts, since Norbert would have eaten the eggs if she found someone else's eggs in her territory." "Eaten them?" Ariel balked. "Sure, dragons do that sometimes." Hagrid nodded. "They're very territorial. Some of the other handlers once saw a mother dragon eat her own eggs. That's where the Targaryen tradition of removing the eggs from the mother comes from. Some of them might be good mothers and protective of their hoard until the baby dragons hatch, while others might eat their eggs instead. I don't know where Norbert falls on that scale, but I didn't want to risk it, seeing as she wasn't acting very protective of the eggs when I came across them. She allowed me to take them and everything." "And they're viable?" Ariel turned back to Hagrid. "Those 3 are, aye." He pointed towards the fireplaces. "This one is different?" Aemond asked, pointing to the 4th one, which Hagrid hadn't given a cauldron to. "It's a dead egg." "That's too bad," said Ariel. "Have you done the tests yet?" "No, I haven't had time yet. I had to see to the live ones first. But I already know what the result will be. This ain't my first dead egg. There's shells full of dead eggs on Dragonstone, useless ones. And every time an egg has felt like that one, that just shows it's dead. These other 3 are definitely alive." Ariel walked between the eggs, inspecting them in turn. One was a deep midnight blue, which he'd first mistaken for black, with a golden spot on its side in the shape of a wonky-looking star. The second was turquoise and gold, and the third was a minty green and copper, with some thin, glimmering yellow lines. The 4th one on the table was almost all golden, with fine shimmering copper lines cutting through the gold. A very decorative egg, but Hagrid sounded sure it was dead. How can you tell it's dead? Ariel wondered. There's no magic in it. No magic in it? Hagrid mirrored her perplexed expression. Don't you notice it? Ariel blinked. What's there to notice? Touch it, you can definitely tell then. Hagrid picked up the dead egg and carefully placed it on the table before Ariel. It was the size of a melon, with tiny scales that shone metallically in the daylight. Go on then, put your hands on it. You can definitely feel the difference, right? Dubious, she gave it a try. The tiny scales felt rubbery to her touch, the shell hard, but it wasn't quite like stone, too fragile, and Ariel suspected if pushed with too much pressure, the egg's surface would dent. Dead or not, it was still flesh, not yet fossilized like the old unhatched eggs on Dragonstone. Having James strapped to her chest made it harder too, so she carefully passed him over to Eliza and walked up to the fireplace. She whipped out her wand, pointed it at her hand, and muttered, Peregnis. Careful to keep her sleeves rolled up and out of the direct heat, she proceeded to stuff her hands into the fiery hot cauldron. What a... Aegon yelped, and several of their staff made sounds of distress. It's fine, Hagrid waved them off. She's not gonna get burnt. Right, I forgot. Aegon shook his head. This is like the time Eamon threw her into the fireplace. I didn't throw her, Eamon said, looking affronted at his older brother. May as well have. Ariel tried to understand what Hagrid had meant, but it wasn't going very well. There's a difference? Different scale type? The shape's a little different. I think this egg is bigger than the one on the table, but it's hard to tell. Is that what you mean? It was warmer too, but the egg was cooking inside a cauldron, so of course it'd be warm. It's not the weight or the feel or the temperature. Forget all of that. But one's void, you know? Like picking up a strange stone, while the other... can't you tell? Harold took her hand out of the cauldron. No. The life once has a pulse to it. Doesn't it make your fingers tingle? I can feel it just getting near them, like a coating of magic. You can tell from a distance? Harold asked. Without even touching them? He nodded. Gets a bit harder, but at least I can tell there's something magical about the eggs. Ariel tried, but though she could feel the physical aspects of it, such as the weight, shape, texture and temperature, anything else was beyond her. Even though Hagrid talked like it should have been instantly noticeable. Well, it sure as hell wasn't to her. Was this why Hagrid was so good with dragons? Ariel was well trained to handle dragons, and the Parsisaldan gave her a huge boon. Yet no one beat Hagrid. He didn't need translations. He didn't even need a dragon bond with most of the dragons he handled, and usually managed without casting magic in his daily chores. The dragons treated him like he was one of them, except more tolerable, because they weren't as territorial against Hagrid as they'd be against a true dragon of their own kind. There wasn't a single beast alive Hagrid couldn't endear himself to. Could this be part of the reason why? That there were things he sensed which were beyond Ariel's senses? That wouldn't surprise her. It would actually explain a lot. I think that's magic you can do which is beyond me. She laughed. Is it truly that noticeable to you? Nah, it's nothing big. Hagrid shook his head. But I can tell there's some live dragon eggs, sure, but that's all. I had to get close to figure out which one was dead. That there's nothing in it. Since dragons are some of the most magical beings out there, for an egg to lack that spark, that means it must be dead. There was a kind of logic to that, except Ariel couldn't feel the trace of magic, that spark Hagrid talked of. So there was a dead egg, huh? Typical. Aegon sighed. How did this even happen? You think Norbert laid them recently? Do you think they can hatch soon? Oh no. Eggs incubate far longer outside the mother than inside. It's that way with most egg-laying species, from birds to snakes. But I know Nober's lair didn't have any eggs a week ago, so these ones were laid recently. It usually takes a few moons from when the eggs are fertilized until the dragon lays the egg. We think it's 3 or 4 moons, something like that. I'd not be surprised if these eggs were fertilized around the time of Aemon's coming of age, or around James's birth. But even if the egg's been laid, it'll be longer still until they're hatched. The earliest hatching I've seen was morning. After they found her egg, she took 7 moons to hatch. But some eggs are recorded to have taken years of incubating, if they hatch at all. I have to keep an eye on the eggs. They go through some stages that can tell me if the incubating process is moving fast or slow. Though likely we're still half a year to a year away from any of these eggs hatching. You suspect Norbert's eggs were fertilized around Amos coming of age? Ariel clarified, because that begged the question. If Norbert was the mother, who was the father? Yes. The father could be anyone then. There's the dragons that's already here, but back then there were a lot more dragons at the point too. Cyrex, Dreamfire, Caraxes and Vermex were here as well. Dreamfire and Cyrex lays their own eggs, so we can't count them, but Caraxes or Vermex might be. We can't know for sure? Aegon surmised. I could ask her, Ariel reminded them. Norbert will tell me. And we can have a guess. Aemon turned the egg gently around. Nearly all of them have some traces of gold. Sunfire, Hagrid nodded. My dragon. Aegon eyed the egg skeptically. That's peculiar. Norbert is always trying to fight Sunfire. Some would call that a form of affection, Hagrid shrugged. Especially amongst monsters. Aegon met Ariel's gaze, neither too enthused, and both unsure how to react to that. Their dragons had... what? Hooked up? That was weird. A blend between disbelief, uncertainty, and a little bit of disappointment battled for dominance. Ariel couldn't tell which emotion was more prominent of the bunch, nor what to make of this, except wonder if this was her comeuppance. Learning Norbert was having eggs with Sunfire... well, perhaps this was how Hagrid felt when he first learned Ariel had eloped.